Good morning. How are you guys doing? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Been working on so many of the technical things. Oh man, you guys. This is just so out of my comfort zone. I'm not a video editor or a streamer usually, so I just like to do this for fun, and I'm really glad when you guys come, and I've been getting messages that people are dusting off their sewing machines and sewing things, and I get late night texts from friends asking for sewing advice, and that's pretty exciting. I'm really glad to see that because that's what I'm here for. I just really want to encourage others to sew and help them out with the technical part. I know that's what I needed when I was learning, and I still ask people sewing questions, so I'm glad that some of you are trying it out and continuing on and going at it full steam, whatever you're doing. So let me know if you can hear me and say hi or do something so I know that everything's working okay. I swapped my cameras out, so I'm hoping that even if I get that weird camera issue, it's only on my face cam, which I zoomed out even further today, so because I may need to hold up the dresses so you can see my microphone and my overhead camera from my machine. So I just wanted you to see that I just got something in the mail today. I'm really excited about. I have been wanting a gingham dress for, I don't know, a while. I had one when I was in my early 20s and I loved it, and I kind of, outgrew it in the adulting sense. And then about 3 years ago, I saw this gingham dress on Instagram and I bookmarked it, and it's still, I'm pretty good at like culling my photos and my bookmarks, like they pile up. But this thing I've never gotten rid of. I still want a gingham dress, and every time I go to shop for gingham fabric, I'm always like, oh, is that gingham like 2 inch square or half-inch square? Like, I don't know what I'm seeing in a picture, what that scale gingham is. So I finally was able to, by someone's post, see which gingham they bought, and then the scale of what it looked like in the picture. So, because I didn't want it to get like really tiny, and I didn't want it to be gigantic, So I picked this navy gingham from Hearts Fabric. They're not local to me, but they're in California, so I may pay sales tax, but they're really close, and I like that. And they're having, looks like a show us your projects for September thing, so I'm gonna check that out. And then I got this pattern. Actually, I'm gonna take it out of plastic so you can see it a little better. I'm definitely gonna make this, and I don't think I'm making it in the gingham because I really want that gingham dress. But this would be really cute. This little tunic. This looks like a go-to pattern for me. The first thing I do when I get a pattern or I see a pattern on the shelf is I look at the flat sketch. That's what that's called back there. I wish there was a back view. I'm not gonna lie. The back view is usually what I'm looking for, as well as a detailed shot of the front view. You can usually see things in that you can't see right here. The Hawthorne dress for the Colette is a really good example of that. I thought that had princess seams for the longest time, and it doesn't. It just has darts. And I only thought that because of the way it fit on the dress form they have it modeled on. It fits so nice and close, but not too tight. And princess seams are great for that. So that's what I thought. And then I finally looked at the flat sketch, and I was like, oh, it's just darts. That's kind of crazy. So yeah, so I can see that there are two views. I think the difference in views are the collars, and that's it. And the shirt tail hem. This is a shirt tail hem with the curve. This is a straight hem. I think the sleeves are identical. It's just one has the ability to cuff it and leave it, put it with the button cuff, the placket here. So this is such my silhouette. I love it. It's a V-neck. It's got a little bit of, it has top stitching. I love top stitching. It does have two placket styles, like the placket opening. This can be a little tricky to sew for some. And the, this style sleeve placket, it just depends if that really is a shirt sleeve placket, a traditional one with a little, looks like a little top of a house at the top. That is a little trickier to sew, but not much trickier than just the bias trim placket, and sometimes I swap out the bias placket when I'm not in the mood to sew that, or I want to get it done really quickly, or I just am feeling like I want success with the first try. So it's, yeah, the Cheyenne Tunic by Hey June Patterns. I'm gonna look at the hashtag. I looked at the hashtags and looked at a few to see how they fit, so it looked really good. And my second box for my Needle Sharp subscription arrived, and I got all kinds of goodies this time. So let's see. I got my sewing goodies. So I got the thread, this little, yeah, a little label to sew in, some clear elastic. I think that's to stabilize the shoulder seams on this particular pattern. I got a twin needle, which will not work on my industrial machine, but it does work on my home machine. And then a regular needle for sewing it together. So she always includes everything you need to make your garment, so you don't even have to go to the store, which is really nice. This is just a little book. I've actually bought these before and given them as gifts. It's pretty cool. And then a guide to stabilizing seams. This is what that gave me the hint that the elastic is used because we're doing something out of a knit. And like you can see, mine is the heavyweight box, which is the large. I don't want to say large. I would say larger. It's the, I think it's the, I don't really know how to describe. Like, I think, I don't know if it's done by skill, price, or involved sewing. I want to say it's just a price thing, because all of the patterns this month, or for one of the, I think this month or the next month, they don't look like they're skill-based tiers. So, because one of them is the Archer, and I know that that's a more, intermediate to advanced sewing thing, and that's not in the heavyweight box. So, this is a bamboo merino fleece. That's what makes me think that it's why, because I know bamboo merino fleece would be kind of pricey. So, it's the South Bank sweater. I would never pick this pattern for me, you guys. Like, I would never pick it. But like I said, I'm just treating this as a wardrobe builder and like a stitch fix for sewers, and just going out of my comfort zone, and I may modify it to reflect my style. So I've never sewn this pattern company. I hadn't even heard of this pattern company. I'm not very in tune with all of the home sewing scene, mainly because I've been in manufacturing and production for a while, and because I tend to draft my own patterns for myself. So, but I love buying store-bought patterns if I know they're going to fit well. So it looks like there's 3 versions, and I will probably go for doing a sweater dress type thing, but I probably won't do that collar until I look at the hashtags to see how it actually lays. The flat sketches, it does look like there's some stitching around the cuff. That must be what the twin needle's for. I don't understand. There's one longer line on each one. Maybe it's just, oh, you know what? If that's not stitching, that's just the gathers of the cuff into the sleeve band. So that's this next month. Oh, and there's a free little bag, which is pretty cute. What kinds of goodies this time? And then my bamboo merino fleece. So it's really yummy. Look at how, can you see? Look how soft that is. It looks really nice. I'm pretty excited about that. So that's what's in this next box. And then I'll probably get right on that, actually. My policy with sewing is a little looser than it is with knitting. With knitting, and I actually have gotten kind of out of practice with this too. I'm a sweater knitter mostly when I do knit sweaters, or when I do knit, and it's really hot where I live, so I've tried to back off of knitting in the last year. Mainly because I'm knitting sweaters that I don't even get to wear, and it's just kind of a shame. And it's really just out of a I'm sad about it thing, because it sits there and I wear it maybe once over the winter. So, because it just doesn't get that cold here. Even 50s and 60s doesn't feel that cold here to me. And I could wear them regularly as my jacket, but the thing is, wearing them into work tends to damage them, so I don't want to do that, because my tables rest against my stomach, and then that scratches the knitting. So I tend to do projects. I finish a project and then I shop for the next project. I know, crazy, right? I'm not just building up the stack of projects to do. In sewing, I tend to build up a few more projects than I'm sewing in the moment, because I can get through them a lot faster than with knitting. But I feel like most of the fun part of doing a project, and tell me how you guys feel about this. Why is that so Thelma? What is so Thelma? Oh, the sweatshirt dress. Yes, I just saw your comment because you guys are a little behind me. Yeah, it is so Thelma. I know, and I'm probably going to look so Thelma in that thing, but we'll see. I feel like part of the really fun part of doing anything is the planning of it. And it's almost like, even if you're not a designer, it's that portion that makes you feel like a designer when you are picking out your yarn or picking out your fabric, picking out your pattern, picking out all those details. And cat quill. And it's that kind of excitement, right? That's why we end up starting lots of projects and not finishing them, because that part is just so exciting. And I'm really good at finishing, and I know that about myself. And I definitely have more works in progress whips project-wise with sewing than I do with knitting. Knitting, I pretty much don't. I have like one that's on the needles, and I've just been chipping away at it for a while because it's just one of those like portable things. So I do tend to like wait to finish the project, then start the new one, because it's exciting, right? And it's also like that carrot at the end of the stick for me, and it gives me something to look forward to, because sometimes when you get done with the end of the project, you still go do that anyway when you've already bought 3 things to make, and then they're piling up, and that stresses me out. I'm not a minimalist, but I do try to keep things at a minimum. And I have 1,000 square foot workshop here, so that's a pretty generous sized sewing studio. I can really let things pile up if I want. Talk about the amount of fabric I have here. I do have a lot of fabric. But knitting wise, I have a pretty small corner, and I do have too much yarn right now. So I do try and, keep that to a minimum. But I am going to get probably right on that subscription box. I really like the fact that one comes every month. That's the perfect pace for me. And I can get to it plus sew other things. So let's get on to our dresses. Pretty excited. I tried them both on, and they both fit really great. That Hawthorne dress is so feminine, and it just fits really nicely. I think like that lightweight fabric is great, and something even drapier would be even better. And then the Charlie Caftan is amazing. Like, if it didn't look amazing, I would still wear it because it's so comfortable, you guys. Like, I'm going to live in that thing, I promise. But the most satisfying thing was ironing everything that I had sewn on Saturday, because I feel like Saturday was a little bit of a sewing slog for me, and it just felt really good to iron it all out. I know some folks are like, why aren't you ironing as you go? And it's just because it's at an awkward spot right here, and I don't really want to have my back to you guys the whole time. And I am a production sewer, sewing home sewing items. And that's just the truth about me. You guys are going to have to get probably accustomed to the way I sew. Is I sew to finish. And I am all about finishing that project, and that's kind of why I'm doing this, to encourage other people to be all about finishing their projects too. So the only change I'm going to make to this dress is I am going to shorten my sleeves, which I forgot to do. I was going to do that off camera just so it's not too cumbersome to watch. But and I'm going to do this pretty unscientifically. I'm going to roll it up like this. But if this were the hem of my dress, I would probably be a little bit more measured about this. This is nice and even all the way around. I'm going to crease it. That's where I want it to finish. This has a bias hem facing, so it's not a rolled hem. And that means I only need to allow for the seam allowance for that, if that makes sense. I have to put my weight on here, otherwise this thing pushes away. And one thing I would like to show is how I use a see-through ruler. This one's a little damaged. So this is one of my favorite tools as a pattern drafter, because the lines on it go both ways. It's perfect for adding seam allowance and taking off seam allowance. And the way I do it is I will put, here's my line, my fold line. I want to add seam allowance to that. So I am going to, like I said, I'm going to make sure this edge is lined up right on top of each other. And then I'm going to make sure also, once I cut this, that I get my right angles at this right here, because I don't want to cut this and then get a V either way, if that makes sense. So I'm going to put this, I'm going to only allow about 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to put my 1/4 inch away from this edge on the fold, the crease that I've made. I'm actually going to mark this with chalk because I can't see it. This is also one of my favorite tools, the Choco Liner. This is a white one with yellow chalk in it because, you know, it just happens. I love this thing. I don't use any other marking thing. It's got a little wheel right here, and then it dispenses chalk as you go. It's really easy to brush off, and it is really accurate. It's really satisfying. This was the old style. I liked it a lot better, but they switched to this more pen style. Comes in lots of colors as well. Yellow tends to be the one that works the best with the things we do around here. Okay, so I'm actually going to see this line right here is along the fold here, so I know that I'm going to get a right angle there, because you just want to make sure you get a right angle. Okay, I'm going to smooth out my line as well. There we go. And then I'm going to check it where it was folded to make sure I have a smooth transition. Really important. It's pretty good. It's a little wonky on this side right here. This is probably making some people cringe, but I'm telling you, I do lots of quick techniques right at the machine to keep moving. And even this, I wouldn't even go to this much trouble probably on my own. I would probably use the scissors, just to tell you I'm being straight with you there. I'm going to do this one, and I'm actually going to, yeah, did I lose it? Oh, here it is. I drop more things now while I'm sewing than I ever have before, and I think it's because you guys are watching. I'm going to lay this right on here and just go by that. It's a nice sharp blade. This one right here is longer, and that's the one I'm going by right there, because that's what I like. And see that right there? You see that little inverted V? We gotta get rid of that. You really want it to be a smooth transition. I could talk a lot about smooth transitions. They're really why some pattern pieces never fit in home sewing, and why things don't fit as well sometimes, because you had to end up making it a right angle in order to sew it, and then you lose a little bit of the garment. So, okay, so now I'm ready to do that. This has my buttons and my chalk in it. So the thing I didn't do the other day, which I meant to do, was hem this facing edge. So I'm going to do that right now. And remember, we're binding or using French seams on this whole dress. We didn't do any serging. So what I did was I just put this little tiny zigzag stitch along the edge. And now I'm going to turn it under. Just looking for my beginning. Yeah, okay. I'm just checking things. So normally, yeah, I would have serged this edge and been done. Just overlocked the edge. I'm just going to turn this a tiny, tiny bit. And the reason I'm only doing a little bit is I don't really want to lose much of my width. And I also know that when I get to the curve, it's going to be tricky. And the smaller this is, the better. I haven't even turned my machine on yet. I don't need to back tack, but I'm going to, because it's my first seam of it on the machine today, the first time sewing on the machine. Oops, sorry. I'm going to try and make that a little more visible for you guys, like that. Makes it look a little like it's crooked because the camera's off to the left here. How do you guys like to finish your facings? If you don't have a serger, what's your preferred? And remember, I didn't go for the fusible interfacing. I'm using just standard. So there's some little tiny threads hanging off, and that is my mostly my fabric. Like this right here is actually thread like that. I'm gonna probably use my awl to hold this in place and smooth out this transition. Just like that. get it right on top of itself. And so now I'm getting up into the trickier area. Before there were sergers, I actually was a home sewer before sergers were an item you could buy for home use. They were in factories, but they were mostly designed for just, you know, minimal use, really, in the factory. And the way they told you to finish your facings was doing a rolled hem like this, but folding it twice. So I'm going to ooch around this corner. I'm going to try and like check myself, like this seam right here, I kind of want it to line up with that seam right there, because then I know that I'm going to get the minimal amount of torquing when I go around the curve. You know, all this looks messy on the inside, but it's going to stay on the inside. We're never going to see it again once we're finished with this, and once we apply like a stitch in the ditch finish to our shoulder seam to keep our facing to the inside. I'm really excited to wear these dresses. I'm going to wear one on Saturday, you guys, so you can see. And I'll try and get a picture taken and show you guys how they fit. I think I made the size 12 in both dresses. I thought I'd made the 10 in the Hawthorne, but I looked back and it was the 12. I had started on the 10 and then I decided to go with the 12. And I'm really glad I did because it's a very close-fitting dress. And close fitting is fine as long as you have the proper amount of ease. Too tight is not okay. I find things tend to shrink a tiny bit, a little bit more and more. And then they finally stop, like fabrics. So pre-washing a few times if you're trying to get rid of all the shrinkage is kind of a good idea. And also, like, my weight fluctuates, and so I don't really want to start with something that's too tight. All right, so here, this is the part that I'm always talking about, the tricky part, because this is a perfect example, right? This is where the cut edge is, but I'm folding this cut edge to about right here, right? So it's going like to the other side, but like that, right? So this cut edge is going to that spot. If I were to measure along this cut edge and then measure, you know, whatever that is, that distance is right there is 3/8 of an inch away. If I were to measure this length and measure this length, they're different. And that's why you get a lot of torquing when you're trying to do a rolled hem on a curve. So a lot of people love like the gored skirts and the flared skirts that have the big billowy skirts, you know, things like that, circle skirts, things like that. But that curve is pretty tricky to hem. And there's ways to get around it, like you could do a bias binding, you can bias face it like we're going to do on the sleeve hems of this, and then it's a little easier. It's just a whole nother way to do it. So the thing that's working for us is because we have that curve is there, it's a little bit on the bias, and so it wants to stretch a little bit, but if you stretch it too much, it's still going to put a lot of stress there and create that torquing. And when I say torquing, I mean that's when you get those diagonal lines on something that just don't look really good. So my little seam here is poking out a little. I'm actually going to trim a little bit, not my zigzag, just the excess there. I'm going to try and get it as lined up as well as I did on the other side. I'm going to sink my awl into the fold right there and try and fold it like that over it. Actually, maybe I'll do that. I'm just trying to make it look as nice as possible in there. Here, I'm going to get a little closer. And now I'm going to tuck this in there and pull that over onto it like that. I love the awl. It's just like, I wouldn't sew without one. I don't use a lot of gadgets and gizmos and stuff when I sew. But the awl, these are my 3 things that are always here. They're always right here. I only use pins in home sewing. The Choco liner, I use it occasionally. The loop turner, you saw that I use on the Charlie Caftan the other day. That's a really nice little thing. But none of them are necessary to sew things together. It's just what your preference is. All right, let's look and see how that looks. What's this thread? Oh, it's just the thread from the waist seam. Let's get rid of that. I like to trim and clean up as I go. It also helps me notice any issues. See, what do you guys think? That's not too bad. Looks pretty good. The awl is by Clover. It's pretty well used. That's how much it's faded. I've had this one a really long time. It's the tapered tailor's awl, not the other one, which I keep thinking I've pulled. I'm going to show you guys the packaging. I bought one. Okay, so look at that. That's pretty darn good, you guys. I got a little bit of rippling there. Once I iron that, it's going to behave a little bit. But I think that looks actually really nice. Honestly, I will admit it looks nicer than overlocking and serging. And the benefit of this is that you're never going to snag it like you do with the serger and the overlock. Whereas when you snag it and then it draws it up, it just looks kind of ugh. But, you know, sometimes you want to get it done quickly. All right, so my little technique on the facing here to keep it to the inside, to help keep it in the inside, it's been staying in the inside pretty nicely, is I'm going to stitch in the ditch at the shoulder here. I think I showed you that the other day. That's my dart. This is my shoulder. I'm going to make sure that it's as smooth as possible everywhere before I do that, because you don't want it to pull. Where are my pins at? I finally made like 2 different carts, one for work and one for sewing the home stuff with you guys, so I can keep the right things on the cart. Okay, so this is my collar. I'm just going to do that so that this is as flat as possible. I'm definitely making this Hawthorne dress again. I'm really glad I finally sewed it. I really love classic feminine silhouettes. They just suit my body type really well. And I know maybe they're not the hippest of things, but like my hairdresser says, pretty's always in. And I kind of like that saying. You can't go wrong with it. You may not be the hippest, but hey. Okay. That looks pretty good. I'm feeling a little bubble here. Oh, that's just that little flipping up there. When we iron that, it's going to be totally fine. Alright, so stitching in the ditch. It's going to do it at the very end right here. Not the whole thing. I'm just going to like tack it a little bit. And it probably won't end up right on top of the seam directly, but it will secure it. Is the lighting okay in the camera? It's dim on my screen, but I think that's because I'm looking at it on my laptop, and when I have my laptop plugged in, it dims it. So just tell me if it's too dim, because I can brighten it up. Just let me know. I can do lots of little settings to help. And let me know if it starts doing that crazy thing it was. Okay, so I'm going to pull this apart, and I really want to get it lined up. I'm going to actually use my hand wheel to start to make sure I'm in there. That's all I'm going to do. Pretty invisible. You see that? That's what it looks like on the other side. And I'm going to trim my little threads. I'm going to do this side. And then this will help my collar, or my facing stay to the inside. The other thing I would do when I make this again is I would make the collar one piece. Like, I'm still baffled by the fact that I didn't notice that the collar has a seam in it. That's just unheard of on this silhouette. There are collars with seams, like a shawl collar, but not this style. I think I got my first stitch a little off there. I'm going to check that. I'm probably going to take out the first stitch because I secured the last couple okay. I don't want it to make a hole in my... This fabric is pretty forgiving, but let's see. There we go. It's a little on the dim side, yeah, so I can brighten it up a little bit. I just don't like to overexpose it too much. That looks pretty good. What do you guys think? Come and brighten it up. I think I can brighten it up on the fly here. Let's see. How's that? All right. I'm going to put my bias sleeve facing on. Okay, a little bit of a note on bias hems. I did it on this dress. You see that? On the bottom of my dress, I put a bias facing on here, or hem. It's on the inside. I wanted that kind of structured double top stitching look. But I will tell you, here's my error every time I do that. I don't pre-wash the bias that I'm putting onto the hem of my garment because I don't, oh, it changes as I move. Yeah, that's what I figure. If I do this, maybe it'll help to like kind of even it out. It just looks too bright to me, you guys. Is it too bright? It looks overexposed. I don't like that. Because the bias isn't pre-washed and the grain line is a little different, okay, wait. Yeah, it's a little overexposed, exactly. I think that's better. That looks better on my screen. It still looks a little overexposed. Because bias, remember the grain line of it? You can actually see the grain line on this. The grain line is right here. This is the length grain. It's either this way or this way, and the other one is the cross grain. So the shrinkage is this way. If this is the length grain, the shrinkage is this way. If this is the length grain, the shrinkage is this way. And so if I just use my bias, because I have hundreds and hundreds of rolls of bias here at Chicken Boots, and sometimes it's just fun to add that little contrast hem. I don't pre-wash that though, right? Because sometimes I'm just like, ooh, I'm going to do this. And I do it at the last second. I'm impatient. I want to finish the garment. And I just think, oh, bias, it'll be fine. And then that's what I get. I get this, like, this one's not bad because I double stitched it. But you can see all this texture, this little lumpiness. Oh, here, let me see. Can you see all this texture here? All that lumpiness? That's because the bias is shrinking. See, there's no lumpiness on the bias side. It's only on the outside. So this bias shrank. The outside was already pre-washed, so it didn't shrink anymore. And this is a bias dress that I put bias hem to, but the thing is, one was pre-washed and one wasn't. So it's just how it is. All right, so I'm going to sew my bias into a circle first. And it looks like they gave me a really long piece for this. And I'm going to, you don't want to stretch your bias out. You just want it to be nice and flush. And I'm going by bottom edge. You could measure with a ruler as well, but I'm gonna just lay it down and cut it. It's very, very forgiving because it's bias. It stretches. Yeah, I have a lot of white in the frame, exactly. It's because I moved my camera over a little so you could see some more of the machine bed. Okay, so I'm just going to trim this. I want a 1/4 inch seam. It's my preference. If I did 5/8, I probably wouldn't even need to shorten it. Let's see, I got to make sure I'm doing right sides together. Yeah, this is right sides together. I don't need to do a French seam on this because it's going to be fully encased. It's actually pretty wide too. So I may do, let's see, how wide do I want this to finish? Probably like that. So I'm gonna cut this in half, kind of lengthwise. I'm gonna back tack right here, around the middle. And then I'm just gonna cut this I'm gonna cut about a 1/2 inch off like this. Make sure it's pretty even and that I have my 90 degrees almost there. That's fine. That works. We can smooth all that out and do that other one. Like I said, the bias is really forgiving. It's very stretchy. Trying not to stretch it out right now. That's why I'm kind of being gentle with it. I'm not a gentle person. I tend to kind of bulldoze my way through most things. I got an email from a friend who's been watching this stream, which is pretty cool. And she requested zippers. So we'll definitely tackle some of that. I haven't been sewing many home sew zippers. Obviously the kind I do for chicken boots are quite different and a lot easier. Okay. I'm gonna make sure my back stitch is still on both ends of this one. Yep. I'm gonna kind of smooth it out because it's such a lightweight fabric. All right. I'm gonna press this open. I'm just gonna finger press it. Scraping it with my nails. Really want it to be pressed open. Okay, and you know how I feel about sewing circles. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make my dress inside out, just the sleeve, really. I'm trying not to move my dress a whole lot because I have some chalk markings for my buttonholes that I'm gonna show you guys. And there's a lot of pins in it too. And I'm gonna push my seam allowance to the back. And I start and stop on the underside of the seam. And I'm gonna do about 1/4 of an inch seam. Now I'm gonna see if the circumference works. Feels twisted, it's not. There we go. I probably should look up how they intended these sleeves to be sewn, but this is how I want them. I want the bias facing to go onto the inside of the garment. I think it's a softer finish rather than binding the edge like you would on a blanket, for lack of a better description. Trim my threads. And then I'm going to understitch this. Not going to top stitch it like I did on the blue dress I'm wearing. I'm not going to back stitch because I don't want to add any more bulk to my underarm. And I'm going to come back on to it when I complete the circle. So remember, understitching, I'm pushing my seam allowance towards the item I'm sewing onto, which is the bias facing. Before I did that, it felt very whooshy and very soft, and now it has a little more structure. And you'll see like it wants to turn to the inside now. This would be a good time to iron the sleeve. And so that's going to be my facing. I'm going to roll hem it to the inside like that. So I'm going to do my other one, and then I'm going to finish that one. So I'm going to put my sleeve inside out. I see a thread, so I'm going to trim it. The inside of this garment looks so nice, you guys. Look at that. So nice. So it's all completely finished because of those French seams. It's a really classy touch. I'm not known for having a classy touch, so thank you for making my dress classier. Okay. Lining up my seam on top and pushing my sleeve underarm seam to the back. It's already going that direction because of how we put it to the armhole. I'm not going to line up all the way around. I did that earlier just so you guys saw that it did that, because I know it's going to, and if it doesn't, I will address that when I get there, but it's going to, because now I have enough sewn that I can check right now. See, I'm not pulling it. It wants to lay in there really nicely. I think when your measurements line up and you're sewing the right fabrics, it helps to, it helps that you won't need as many pins. It helps that kind of aspect. You won't need as many pins if everything is kind of lining up really well. If the fabric's not slippery. I mean, if the fabric's slippery, then yeah, that's, you know, you need all the help you can get. I just don't tend to. Okay, so I've kind of wound up my dress there, so I'm going to unwind it, and now I'm going to do my understitch. Dressmaking is all about so many of the exact same stitches over and over again. So getting these kind of basic stitches down just makes it easier and easier for you to not have to worry. I ran out of bobbin, so I'm just going to start the whole seam over. You have less to worry about because once you start perfecting those seams and those seam finishes and all those techniques, then you don't have to worry about that part. You just have to worry about the construction. I clean out my bobbin case pretty often, and my undercarriage, where it goes into the bobbin case holder. I don't want to have to visit a mechanic or have a mechanic visit me, more likely. So I'm always trying to keep my machine as smooth as possible. And the lint and buildup and stuff like that, that kind of stuff, it's more than just like oiling your machine. Like that kind of lint buildup can cause other issues. And the worst for me is if I get my timing issue happens, or my timing gets off on my machine. All right, I'm gonna start over again. Oh, I should have sewed a little tiny bit, but it's okay. It's gonna be on the inside. Because my machine, when I switch bobbins, it's not like a home machine. It'll be a little messy the first few stitches. See, can you see all that thread? Because of the thread tails from the bobbin get sucked into there. And it's partly because I don't do a back stitch and partly because the thread tail's there and it's got to go somewhere. So what are you guys sewing? I've been seeing people like sewing more often. What are you guys making right now? And are you kind of shifting your sewing because fall's coming? Or are you trying to be like, okay, I got to get these summer projects done because fall's coming and I'm not going to have these unfinished things sitting here? Tell me what you're sewing right now. All right. Hoping I'm keeping everything in the camera view as well. So now I'm gonna flip my sleeves back the other way because I'm still wanting to sew always with the circle like this. Never like this. Because then I know I'm going to catch the other side. I'm really klutzy even in sewing, so I just try and make it as easy as possible. All right. Yeah, I am not going to pin this first, but what you can do is you can iron this to the inside. Good idea even for me. I'm going to finger press it right now. I'm going to tell it, this is what I want you to do. And how about I pin it? Does that make you guys feel good too? Set myself up. Because the bias is a little bit different, so I'm gonna at least pin it just like that. I'm gonna go around my circle and just pin it down. That way I know my edge is on the edge. Like it's not like going to the front or the back, or to the inside or the outside of the sleeve. I'm glad you're sewing vicariously through me, Brooke. We will get a lot done together. How's that? You are getting a lot done in other ways. And all your knitting's been amazing lately, all those projects you've been posting. Okay. I'm going to do one more right here. So this is a good example of why you want your edge here when you're sewing to be as straight as possible, because a little bobble here is actually going to show if it's wiggly. If you sew and then you kind of like, oh, the phone rings, and you kind of, you know, move a little bit, or you go and you stop mid seam, you really want that because you're turning it to the inside. Whereas if you were hemming it, it's going to be a little more forgiving. It's not going to let you do that as easily. Okay. Oh, I kind of wish I would have pinned the other direction, like this way. Now I'm going to meet the cut edge under there like that, because then I know I'm not going to have like a little valley in the middle of my bias hem. Do you know what I mean? So I'm going to make this cut edge here meet the one that's on the inside, the raw edge of the seam. Because if I went a little shy of that, I'd have this little divot, because the bulk of the seam is here and the bulk of the seam is here, and then there'd be this like space here. And you might see that eventually, especially wearing the garment over and over again, the more it washes. You know how your garment gets like broken in when you're washing it over and over again? So, and it's also makes it so I don't have to pin it. It makes it even easier because there's a little spot for me to kind of go up against. Put my cherry pie right there. I do this a lot. I just kind of put my finger under there like that. I can kind of see it. I can feel it. There's a lot of little cues I'm getting by touch and visually as well. This will also, because I'm putting that edge right up to the cut edge, it helps keep the width of this pretty consistent. As long as my stitching is consistent, which it may not be. If I pinned it, probably more accurate. But let's be real. Barring any really big things, am I ever going to know about that if it was a little bit wiggly? Is it really going to bug me? Or am I going to be so happy to put this dress on every time I put it on? Yes, Brooke. I know. I actually, the other day, was like, I wonder if I'm wearing the same dress every time I stream with you guys. Because I don't wear the same dress every day. But I don't think I have actually worn the same dress twice or outfit. It's kind of funny. And not that it matters. Like, that's such a high school thing to worry about. All right, you guys. Ooh, hubba hubba. Look at that. Kind of nice and clean finish. This dress is so clean finished. I'm pretty excited about that. So there you go. What do you guys think? You like that? A lot of stitching on the inside. This can look nicer. It can look a lot nicer. I could use a smaller gauge thread, a smaller gauge needle, a smaller stitch length, and make it look very delicate and precise and a little more couture. Like, there are lots of different things just by switching those things out that really change the way this looks. But I'm going to have a done dress. Okay. Here's my other one. Here's my other one. Do a lot of you have machines that do your buttonholes? Thanks, Brooke. Or do you, like, what's the buttonhole setup on your machine? I'm kind of curious because mine is kind of automatic. It's not as automatic as I've seen other machines. I love the buttonhole on my machine, actually. I'm pretty happy with it. But the way mine is I put it on the buttonhole setting, but I have to press the reverse button every time I want it to change which leg of the buttonhole I'm doing, whether I'm doing the end or the long sides or the other end. But it does do a few things automatic, like when I get to the very last one and I press the reverse button for the last time, it will actually complete the whole thing, even doing like a little, its version of a back stitch, you know? But I've seen some that are way more automatic. You just press one button and the whole buttonhole shows up because you've preset the length that you want it to be. And I think, like, if you're not going to use all the fancy settings on some of these machines, the one you should definitely get the hang of is the buttonhole one, because it's really, they've really made buttonholes so much easier and less scary. And if you make a buttonhole and you don't like it, you can take it out as long as the fabric is forgiving enough. You just get it wet, get rid of the holes, iron it out, and it looks good as new almost, you know? Like sometimes it gets a little tired. Like this fabric, I'm not gonna lie, it's not gonna be as forgiving of a buttonhole. But most fabrics are, especially like a quilting cotton. And this is lighter weight, it's more of a lawn. It's Art Gallery's version of a lawn. It's not like a Liberty of London lawn. It's a little looser woven, if you know some of those brands. Ooh, I'm not close enough to the edge. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like I'm too far away from the edge. I'm gonna move over to the edge so you can see the difference. Like the edge meaning like this fold edge here. My needle's just not very close to it. My machine is probably going to be a lot more accurate than a home machine when you set it up. So when I set up a straight line on this machine, it's going to keep going there. I have to really move it. On a home machine, the presser foot doesn't press down as hard. You know, you can set that up, and I would never buy a machine unless I could set that, and that's what this is right here. On top of most machines is the pressure of your presser foot. I really like a tight pressure as long as it's still moving through. And on a home machine, it's really easy to get a wiggly line because of the presser foot pressure. It's just not enough. There's a few threads here. I looked this over, but I missed a ton of them. I'm gonna go back and look at all of this before I wear it. Okay, did I get all the pins out? Yeah. Okay, so I still didn't even get that close to the edge. It's hard to change the course of my machine once it's going. Okay, let's see. So what's left? We have the buttons and buttonholes, and we have the hem. And I should have thought about what I'm going to do for the hem, because there's actually a way to do a really nifty notched hem. Yeah, actually that's what I'm going to do. I'm pretty sure I remember it. And I remembered something like when I was sewing that Charlie Caftan on Saturday, I was kind of, hi Christina. It was easy. That's great. I'm really glad your automatic buttonhole was easier. That's awesome. And see now, you know, it's like you have a way to do your buttonholes. So my big like disclaimer on both these dresses is that when I decided to do them both with French seams, I had already cut the dresses out and I hadn't set them up for French seams, because sometimes you need to set up your garment for French seams. And one of the things I didn't set up was the pockets, and the other was the side slits. That was both on the Charlie Caftan. And so I looked at them when I was done and I was like, wait, I know I'm missing something here. And also I noticed that the pockets are not, side seam pockets are not drafted the traditional way anymore. And so that was the thing I kept going, this isn't right. And it's because I'm just going with how they do it. And usually a pocket, you know, like you have your pocket piece and then it has this little like seam allowance that sticks out. And same with the garment it sews to. And it's a totally different looking side seam pocket. It looks so much nicer because definitely the seam goes to the inside of the pocket and you don't see it. It's totally invisible. And that's what I kept expecting, and that's why I kept going, why is this looking so weird? It's because I was expecting that on top of trying to do the French seams. So that is my disclaimer. And when I got to the vent, I was like, yeah, I didn't set this up right. And all I had to do was clip into it, and it was totally fine, and I'll show you what I did. This is pretty even right here. I'm just going to trim off a little bit right here. Is that in camera? Yeah. Just like that. And then I'm going to open this up and make sure I got a right angle, because I didn't. I can tell. Right here. Oh, it's not too bad. Yeah, it's not so bad. Okay. What did I just see? I just saw something. Oh, yeah, this thread. This dark thread. I'm used to sewing cream thread. It really blends in, which is nice. All right, let's see if I can remember how to do this. what I just did now, I made sure that this length of my dress is the same, the left placket and the right placket. I bumped my camera. Let's see. It's so easy to move this thing. Because it's better to check that now, the length of your plackets, because they're going to go like this, right? Right over left, right down the front of you. And you wouldn't want the hem at the bottom to be an inch or a half inch off or even a quarter of an inch off. That is noticeable, and it is something I am going to admit, it's just the production person in me and the pattern drafter in me. I look at it even on store-bought garments. It's just a habit. It's not like I'm critiquing it. It's just like I look for certain things as a person that has designed patterns for production, and I'm looking for like, oh, how was that prototype sewn? It's like a total automatic thing I look for. I look at it in mine. I see mistakes I've made later on. I'm like, oh, gosh darn it, why did I do that? So it is something noticeable because it is a break in the line of the hem and your eye goes to it. So there's little things you can do to even it up, and I totally suggest evening it up, because it's just one of those things, like, you don't want someone's eye to go to that. You did this beautiful job on this dress. You don't want someone's eye to go to that. You're like, don't look at that part, So I think the way I do this, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sew a seam across right here, because that is nicer than hemming the placket. Like, I could just hem this, like this, but I'm not going to do that. It's just, I should see how the pattern does it, but I'm actually going to do about an inch. I'm going to leave an inch and a quarter for my hem, which looks like about that. Oh, I don't like that pulled that right there though. So I may hand tie this. I don't want that like gathering in like that. So I'm gonna hand tie that like I do a dart. I have to raise my hand wheel, pull it out like this. Because I don't want this right here to poke in. It just makes the corner not as crisp, you know what I mean? Like, we like the crisp corner. Just like down. That Charlie Caftan, you guys, like, really the only tricky thing on that garment was that front waist panel. And once you're done with that, the rest is so easy. And in fact, the finishing, all we have to do is roll hem the sleeves and roll hem the skirt, the dress. It's like so quick. Okay, so I'm going to actually trim this away like this. Just get rid of that bulk. I think I'm gonna do this too. Hope that's right. Can't remember. Yeah. So now, see, look. It goes like that inside there. And then I will turn that under and sew it down like that. Right there. What do you think? Pretty nice, huh? Let's do my other side. And now I'm going to make sure I get my length correct again, because now that I've sewn something, I've changed it. We checked our bodice length the other day. I'll focus on my skirt. Yeah, I did hand tie my darts when I did this, Brooke. I don't always do it. Like, if it were a heavier weight fabric, I wouldn't hand tie it. I would be more apt to not do that, but it's a good idea, and that's because the bust is such a focal point, right? Like, our eye goes right to that on a garment if there's any little pucker or anything, and And when you back stitch on anywhere, for me especially, it creates bulk and it draws in the fabric. You know, a lot of machines have better tension for home sewing than this one does. I'm using kind of a big needle. But a lot of home machines still do that. It draws it up because you've just gone back and forth over that spot. So you're asking the fabric to go forward and backward. The machine's doing that. It's putting a lot of tension on it. And then, you know, you got a stitch in front and a stitch in back, stitch in front, stitch in back. And those stitches are kind of locking up. So it draws in the fabric. And then you have this little pucker right there at the apex of your bosom. And let's face it, some apexes are in different spots than others. And one of my pet peeves is when a dart goes above my apex. It should be below. And if you had it right here and then you had that little like pucker from the end of your dart that was easily preventable, it's kind of a bummer. And taking out your back stitch, and you know, you could wet it and then iron it out, you can kind of correct that. Yeah, so all I do is when I go to the end of the dart brook, I just sew to the end and then leaves ties like a thread tail on the upper and the lower, and then I just tie it in a knot. That's all I do. And then I trim it to like leave like a 1/4, 3/8 of an inch of the thread there. And then that way also, if you needed to reposition your darts later, that's a lot easier to take out than seam ripping your back tack, because the back tack is so much less forgiving on your fabric than that is. So I sometimes accidentally cut my threads when I was pulling it out, but that's just because my machine's really touchy and I'm getting used to that. Okay, so here. I'm gonna just mark it like that with my nail, just like that. My nails are so handy. They're a good tool. They're good to me. So I'm gonna start on the fold and I'm not gonna back tack. I have a thread tail. I'm gonna back tack here though. And I'm gonna hand tie this. This is exactly how I do on a dart. And the idea of darts is that they're supposed to just fade to nothing. So a really big dart, which tends to be on a lot of my garments because my rib cage is a little narrow and I'm kind of busty for that, that really sharp angle then tends to not blend in as easily. So, so I just leave like a little bit like that. I'm going to trim out this bulk here and trim off the facing. That's what I end up with. Do any of you finish your skirt front plackets like this? Or maybe you guys haven't even sewn one of these before. Like, it's not very common to sew a dress with a full front opening. You're welcome, Brooke. All right. So, I feel like I should iron this. What do you guys think? I know you guys say yes. Making it always hard for me, huh? So I know I can do a pretty wide, well actually I can't do a really wide hem on this because it has quite a bit of a curve. I forgot we have a smooth waist on this, and so I'm actually going to trim off a lot of this because this is how much I really want my dress to get shortened. So I'm going to trim off and then do a rolled hem. Because when I get to some of these curves, see this curve here? Sewing an inch on here, going up, creates this. And that's what I do sometimes. If I really still want that inch hem, and maybe I do. It's hard to do on a rolled hem. It's better to do on a serged hem because then I can do something like this. So this is a tip, you know, if you have a hem that has this big curve, you want a wide hem, and you have all this excess, you want to do this, just kind of, you're kind of doing a little dart. Just don't do such a big one. You want to do them either frequently so you don't get a big one, so you don't get a point right here on your fold. But if you do them frequently, like little ones, then you can. So let me just try that because it's kind of a helpful thing to do. And let me see if I can put my iron on. Here we go. I can iron. I just have a little ironing board set up here just because of space, because I have to have a pretty confined space for my stream setup. I really like a full-size ironing board for doing dressmaking. So for most of the time when I'm doing a rolled hem, like on the Charlie Caftan sleeve, I do not iron it first. I just go for it. And sometimes you can use a ruler. You can set it in your hem to make sure you're getting it parallel. You can't do that on the red one that I have there. It will warp the ruler, but there are ironable rulers out there. My back? Yeah, that's my back. So say you want to shorten a dress, and you know, it's kind of hard to do that on yourself while you're wearing it and trying it on. If you want to do that, and you have a friend or a partner, a husband or a wife or whatever to help you, you can stand a little higher than them, like maybe on a chair, and then they will measure from the floor up to where you want your hem to be either cut or finished, depending on how you want them to mark it. And then that way it's parallel to the floor. So say you have a big booty and you don't want your dress to be shorter in the back than the front. That's a really great way to do that. Measure from the floor up to the hem. Or say you have a big belly, or your dress, you know, is longer in the back for some reason. Maybe it's the pattern styling. That will help that. Like anytime that you measure from the floor and your hem is parallel to the floor, you can kind of get rid of that kind of disparity. Can you guys hear me okay? I'm almost done. I got rid of that portable mic, and I think I did it at the right moment because it started to cut out, and I don't know why. Its life was short-lived. Okay. Hello. Okay, so let's see here. Now we have our ironed hem, just like that. And I'm going to pin it at the side seams so that I have my goals, my targets as I'm going around. I'm going to check my hem width at the fronts because I feel like one's wider than the other right now, and that may needed to happen. I knew I pressed that wrong because of my center front plackets matching. Oh good, you can hear me when I'm over there. That's good because I'll probably want to iron occasionally. Yeah, see, like this one looks a little wider. Things happen. Maybe my fingernail treatment wasn't as accurate. So ideally, my bodice is going to match to the waist seam right here and overall. You want these two to match, those two to match, and then the whole thing. Oh yeah, so this one is a little off right here. I'm going to I'm going to raise this one up. A little bit. Just like this. I'm going to raise it a lot. Oh, I did back tack. Shoot. Let me make sure that didn't draw it up. If I weren't trimming this much off, I would actually take that seam out right there. I'm going to take this one out right here so I can trim it off. I just like it to be clean. I'll trim it on this side so I don't accidentally do my zigzag stitch. Oh, see? Oh, I took out the wrong one. That's why that did that. That's so funny. Sometimes when I turn it to the inside, I get confused on which one I wanted. There we go. I got this one too. There we go. Trim all of the mess. Did you guys all have a good long weekend? That kind of threw off my week. That's why I didn't stream on Tuesday. I have to be honest with myself. My #1 priority right now is getting my fall fabrics out for chicken boots, because that is my job. This is not my job. I'm just doing this for fun. I'm not sponsored by anyone. This is just something I want to do and explore and have some fun with, because I've gotten so much out of streams myself. So I just really want to try it out, and so with others. I needed another project, didn't I? Okay, I'm gonna just touch up this little edge here. Okay. This is why you take care of your pins. You don't want that to happen. You guys are going to hear me rant about magnetic pin cushions, and I'm really sorry if I offend people, but I really don't like them. And I really like, it's really funny because people will suggest that I use one, like I've never heard of them before, but I tell you what, guys, I've ruined a few scissors in the past because of magnetic pin cushions, because it magnetizes your pins, and then you sometimes don't know one's stuck to the back side of your scissors, and then you clip that pin and it ruins your scissors, and it happens. So, not a fan. Alright. I'm not going to pin this whole thing. I recommend you pin it. I'm not going to, because like I said, I'm all about that finishing. I'm actually going to try and do my start and stop right under the edge of this facing so that it kind of lines up with it. I'm not going to pull. I don't want this to torque. Now, once I have this started, I'm going to put the bulk of my dress on to the machine up here so that the weight isn't pulling it off of the table. I'm just going to gently poke it under. I don't really save a lot of time not ironing it. I know that, because it's going to be a little fussier for me to do it this way, and ironing it would have taken that out. So the time I would have spent ironing it would ensure success, and it would negate the time I'm going to spend sitting here fussily doing this. I'm going to add a couple pins here because I want to make sure that this little excess right here, I get rid of that once I get there, if it still wants to be gotten rid of. So I'm trying to make sure that I'm not getting torquing, it's straight up and down. And because I have this little bit of an extra, because of the flare of my skirt, I'm going to kind of work it in there, and I'm going to dart it. See, like that. Another way you could do that is you could put a stay stitch along the fold line of your hem and then just slightly draw it, just like how we put in the set-in sleeve. A stay stitch is really useful that way because you could just pull those threads just really gently and then drop the fabric, barely any tucks, and then you could have a nice easy way to do it. You would just have a little line of stitching on the inside of the garment on the fold line, which most likely you could take out at the very end if you don't like it. No one's probably going to see it though. So another way to finish this would be to use an invisible hem, and that is a stitch on almost every home sewing machine. It looks like a heart rate, so it goes doot 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 like that, like a little like your heartbeat on a monitor at the hospital. It's the best way I can describe it. And that is a really nice way to get an invisible hem, or a blind hem, I should call it. I guess that's more of a traditional way to call it. Try and get it as parallel as possible. Like that. Tuck my hem in there. And what I'm doing is I'm holding this because I don't want this edge to get torqued, right? So put that in there, and then you see there's my excess. This is another way to do it. Once I already have the fold going. Did I just run out of thread? Okay. If I run out of thread, then I'm gonna be a little sad because I'm not winding. I should be winding at the bottom, but I don't have any more thread to wind a bobbin with. That's why. I only have one spool of thread, so it makes the bobbin thing a little tricky with the industrial machine, because usually you're winding one bobbin while you're using another. How's it looking? It's pretty good. And I'm gonna have a dress. I'm so excited. I know you want to torque. Don't do that. Okay. No torquing allowed. I've been participating in that Sew Photo Hop. Did you guys see that? I don't typically do some of those because they're kind of a lot of work to post every day, and I have a few accounts, and I'm neglecting my Chicken Boots account. I know. But I'm already kind of stymied because one of the photos is separates or all-in-ones. So I can't wait to wear this too, Brooke. And then, and obviously I posted dresses because I really like dresses. And then the next one was like signature look dresses. And then now, a day after one of those, because then it was like my sewing corner, I think, it is seasonal, something like that. And I'm like, well, dress. That's my seasonal thing. I've said this, and I don't really want to be redundant. So I've been looking at other people's. Oh, see, I got a major torque there. You see that? It's because I'm starting to slip here, right here. Take it out. This is how I always hold a seam ripper, by the way. It gives me so much more control over what I'm pulling out. It's kind of a big stitch. The fact that I can just pull this out, you know. But I kind of have a big needle in here right now. I forgot to change it. The thread I usually use for my daytime sewing is bigger. It's a 40 weight, and home sewing is I think 27. Don't quote me on that. Yeah, I can't wait to wear this, Brooke. I can't wait to wear the other one too. I think I sent you a picture yesterday of it. It's so long, and I always like stayed away from caftans for a few reasons. I feel like I'm tainted since I'm a 70s child, and I didn't like caftans then, you know, and I just was like, I'm not going there. But I also thought you had to be tall to wear a caftan. It turns out a caftan just makes you look tall, which I am totally excited about. I don't mind looking taller. And it does. It makes me look really tall. I love it. Definitely going to make another one. I need to find some more rayon. Okay, I'm going to push this edge towards my needle to correct some of this torquing happening. And the torquing is happening because this folded edge is longer than this folded edge here. So this folded edge is longer than this folded edge. Or it's not longer, it's just a little long to what it's sewing to. That's the correct way to say that. This edge is not longer than this. This edge is longer than what I'm attaching it to. That's the distinction. And that's why it wants to torque, because it's pushing all the excess towards me. And because this is the direction this machine is sewing, towards me. And that way the machine doesn't know what to do with it, right? It's just like going to like keep, it's just going to sew a 1-to-1 ratio unless I tell it to sew a little more. It sounds like my machine is winding a bobbin, but it's not. That's a little narrower than I want. Okay. Is this boring? This fabric's a little fussy for this. So now I'm going to just use my awl. I think it'll work better to just hold this way, and then I don't mind folds in the portion I'm hemming. That's not going to show to the outside unless you do really big chunks, like to get rid of the excess. If you do really big chunks like that, then you get a point in your hem. That's why you just want these little ones. And this isn't very drastic. It's totally a manageable amount to do. So. Those threads in there. Try and keep it as parallel as possible. I think, you know, part of sewing is really just knowing how fabric's going to behave and when to pull and when to make it relax, because I have a tendency to pull things as I sew and make them really tight, you know, like I really want the seams. It's not boring. Okay, good. It's not the greatest sometimes. Like I find like, oh, then I just made my thing a little smaller or whatever, just because I tend to just like pull it so it's all nice and tight and snug and pretty, you know, like when I'm sewing a needle case or whatever. But the best thing to do is if you've cut the pattern out correctly, the fabric hasn't relaxed or anything, then keep it relaxed. You know, there's no reason to pull it unless you're supposed to. And the fabric is going to go where it needs to go. So what I'm trying to do is pull it, you know, turn it under, and then also let it relax to where it wants to go. Because if I make it do something else, then it's probably going to react to that, and it's not going to lay as nice. And sometimes, like right now, I'm going to put a pin here because this is kind of a target for me, and I see I have a little bit of excess, and this was like my teaching spot for you guys, so now it wants to fold there. Like I say, this fabric is a little less forgiving in some respects, and others it's really great because it is a really lightweight and I don't want to say open weave, but it isn't a tight weave. It's just a very lightweight, which makes it seem like it. I'm gonna start getting torquing if I'm not careful here. I may end up with a little torquing, and you know, it is what it is. I'm gonna iron the heck out of it. It's just kind of like, ironing is the sewer's version of blocking and knitting. But I know a lot of times when I'm sewing, my hands are doing a lot more than I realize. And then I'll have someone sitting right next to me sewing, and I'm like, oh, by the way, you know, my hand underneath is pulling here and pushing there to make sure that I'm, you know, on target. And you can't see that. I really don't want to run out of bobbin right now. I just need to make it to this end of this hem, and then I'm done with this machine. But I hear it. I can hear my bobbins really low. I'm playing thread chicken. Okay. So I have a bobbin for my my home machine for my buttonholes, and I'll probably only sew like one buttonhole for you guys. I'm gonna put my machine up here and see how that goes, you know. But I'm just gonna show you really how I mark them, because I know that for me that was always very mysterious, and every time I do it, I'm always like, oh, how do I do this again? Like, and really it just comes down to preference and trial and error and things you don't like yourself personally or you do like. So my presser foot, I think you can probably see it's open right here. See that? And that can cause some issues for me because the fabric can get caught in that groove. What I do like about a home sewing machine is that sometimes the slit for the thread is on the side and then the front of the presser foot is solid. And I feel like that it sets you up better. I feel like it's better sewing. The presser foot has a lot to do with your sewing and how it's going to go. It's touching the fabric. It's really important. Okay, guys, I'm almost there. But it sounds like I'm winding a bobbin right now. Maybe it's just my machine. I'm gonna move these so I don't lose track of any of them. Just gonna keep one. Almost there. And stretch. And particular attention on the front, since it's what I'm gonna see when I look in the mirror. Definitely starting to feel like fall, which I'm down for. I really miss dress season. I actually don't mind the heat. I'm definitely gonna miss watermelons. I eat a lot of watermelon. It's kind of like a food group for me. Keeps me hydrated. It's starting to torque. Don't torque. I think there's a curve right here. That's why I'm gonna push that in there. What's going on? It's a little bit torquey right there. I'm gonna see if that corrects it. And then I can always take out little sections if they really bug me. But I've also noticed, like, since I moved here, we have moths that eat wool here, and I've never lived somewhere like that as a knitter. And so I keep finding, like, I finally, like, put all of my sweaters in a dresser, and I'm hoping that makes it so the moths can't get in there. It's an old dresser. And, but I keep finding, like, from before I moved them in there, dresses that have little holes. And so I have this pile, like I have a pile of knitting to fix. It's like, I want to fix it before it's fall, because, you know, I want that one opportunity to wear my sweater, because I don't get many. Okay, guys. Now I'm going to look at my beginning one. I'm going to try and get it the same width, because remember I changed the width at the to make my plackets match. So I have a little bit more turned under on one side, but I still want the hem width to be the same. Excuse me. Like that. Stop twerking. We're on the home stretch. Like that. Doesn't necessarily, the fold doesn't have to match up. The stitching does, because that's what we're going to see. That's my stitching right there. Okay. We made it with thread. Let's look at our bobbin. I'm curious. Ah, we're fine. We're totally fine. Okay, good. Just making sure. All right, guys. Woo! Okay, so my last step is buttons and buttonholes. And anytime you finish a garment that has buttons and buttonholes, do them right away. Because otherwise it sits there waiting and you want to wear that garment. So this is, I don't have very big canvas here to show you, but the way I measure my buttons and buttonholes, especially like if you have to do it on top of the other side like this, I stick a ruler underneath like this so I have something to pin against. So that's my first tip. Especially like say it's a pullover with a placket and the back is underneath the placket, you can slip the ruler in there and that way you can pin against it. So when you are doing a dress like this, you want vertical buttonholes, not horizontal. The places you use horizontal buttonholes are areas of strain or areas that are the direction of the buttonhole and there's not enough room for a vertical one. So the main two places you're going to come across a horizontal buttonhole is a collar stand on, say, like an Oxford shirt. So the little narrow collar underneath the collar that folds over, that's right here at your neck, that gets a horizontal buttonhole. And there's two reasons for that. It's because you don't have enough room usually to put a vertical buttonhole, and it would look a little incongruous with the narrow collar. Without the collar coming out of the stand, that's called a mandarin collar, so that's another term for it. And the other reason you want a horizontal buttonhole there is because it's against your neck and you want it to give. And the button is going to slide in that buttonhole a little bit more so you can breathe. You look at any men's shirt, like an Oxford button-up or something like that, it's got a vertical or horizontal buttonhole at the top, and then all the rest of them are vertical. The reason you want them vertical and not horizontal on the front is because you don't want the shirt to get misaligned this way, because then their collar at the top won't look as nice. It'll move like this. The stand is going to move. It's going to give a little bit. It's very incremental. But for the rest of the shirt, the vertical buttonholes look nicer on a shirt front placket, and it keeps it all aligned. And it's the same here with the dress. Another place that you want a horizontal buttonhole is your jeans at the top of the waistband, or any waistband if you look at those. So if you're ever in doubt on which way to do something for anything you're sewing, find something in your wardrobe that is the same. It's probably something you have somewhere you can look at, or someone does, and you can see how they sew it. Or I used to shop in stores and look at the way things were sewn all the time. It was just something I did because I was really interested in how a factory did it. And I was trying to make my garments not look home sewn. And also because I was doing so much work for garment designers that I hadn't come across all of the types of garments that I was drafting patterns for and designing for. So I wanted to see how a factory would do it, not to make it look like I'm not trying to fake my skills. It was more that I needed to know how factories wanted the pattern, because there's lots of different ways to do it. And so you want to look at the different techniques and the finishing techniques that already exist, the factory can handle. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. They will not sew it that way. Or if they do, it'll take them too long and it'll cost the customer too much. So you want it as streamlined as possible. So I always recommend when you're shopping, just take a look at the way things are sewn. It's really interesting. And if you want your stuff to look budget or be fast or something like that, you look somewhere like Target or you know, Walmart or something like that. Nothing wrong with that because that's quick. You know it's going to be easy probably to put together as long as you have the machines for it. If you want something to have nicer techniques, then you look at a store that's going to sell something with those garments that you're wanting yours to look like. It just makes sense. Different factories have different machines and different sewing styles, and so do home sewers. You know, there's their couture all the way down to someone doing ready to wear really quick. So that's one of my lectures today. I lecture you guys a lot, I'm sorry. So for my buttonholes, my buttons, this is like the tray from my home machine. I love this little thing. All my feet. Someone commented on YouTube that they want to know how to use all the feet on the machine. Me too. I don't use any of these. I sometimes use the buttonhole foot. Well, this is a rolled hemmer. Wait, that's not a rolled hemmer. You guys probably know it better than I do what these are. I think that's to sew a button onto a garment. This is a nice machine. This is a zipper foot. I know this one. That's a zipper foot. I know what those are too, but they don't have anything to do with the feet. You can sometimes tell by the groove at the bottom. This is the buttonhole foot because it has the 2 grooves for the buttonhole. Which one? Maybe, you know what? I don't think any of these are rolled hemmers. Those are usually separate and cost a lot because they're in high demand, so they mark that one up. Here's my buttons. What do you guys think? I have a lot of orange buttons. I am not going to hide it. I was in an orange and green phase for a long time, hence why this fabric really appealed to me. And I have a lot of orange buttons. So I picked these for this dress. And what I did was I spaced them the way I wanted on the garment like this. I put 4 on the bodice and 4 on the skirt. And then so then I knew I wanted 4, okay? This right here, this little notch right here on this garment is the center of the placket, is where it lines up. It has this funny little V here, and then this notch here, and that is where it lines up. Not like this, and not too far. You see, it creates a little V, just like that. So that is my line that I want my buttonholes on. And so I took my Choco liner. I can still see the chalk, you guys probably can't. And I drew my line just like that. I want my top button to be pretty close to the top so that it stays aligned. So the top of my buttonhole, I'm going to put at 1/4 of an inch below that juncture. So I'm looking at this is 1/4 of an inch. See, this is how I use the parallel lines of this ruler. And then I put my button on that top there, under that line, not on top of the line, under that line. And I draw my other line under it. Now, a bit about buttonhole lengths. So when the buttonhole is sewn, there's a lot of thread, and there is the bar tacks of the buttonhole at the top and the bottom are not they are not included in the opening of your buttonhole, right? That's what stops your garment from fraying past that point when you cut the hole open. It is reinforcing the hole. It's going to get a lot of, torque from your hand putting that button and buttonhole in. It's going to get a lot of torque from wearing it and pulling on it. So you need basically this bar tack enclosed hole. And so this button basically, because it's pretty flat, the hole only needs to be exactly the length of the diameter of the button. And if it were much thicker, you might add a little bit more. If it were a shank, you might add a little bit more. It just depends, and I always recommend doing a sample buttonhole first and seeing what you like for your button length before you put 8 of them on your garment. And then if you're gonna cut your buttonholes, you can feel comfortable with that, because once you cut the buttonhole, it is really hard to fix it. You can't make it any shorter. I mean, you can, like I've done it because I switched out buttons on something, and because I lost a couple and I couldn't find any replacements, and I find one I like better. And so what I did was I just shortened the buttonhole by bar tacking across it and blending in the thread. It's not ideal. So, okay, the other thing to think about is that the dress is hanging here on your buttonhole. And so actually what I could do is lower my buttonhole. I'm realizing now, because I actually designed these buttonholes for different buttons, and then I realized I had enough of these and I'd much rather use these. So I'm actually going to lower this, and I'm going to tell you why. These, where the holes are, is where the buttonhole, the top of the buttonhole is going to rest. So this part, the first bar tack, is going to rest right here. No matter where you put it, it doesn't sit like that. It's not flat on a table. The gravity is going to pull it down. So if I want my button like this, fine. I don't. We're going to get rid of those. I still have my center line. I'll probably so my buttonholes are vertical, so that I don't, if I do it this way, the buttonhole is going around the holes of the button, and so it'd be slightly open like this. Does that make sense? Am I getting too nerdy for your buttonhole needs? I've just thought a lot about this and figured out, you know, like I've had all these mistakes, things have gone wrong, and then I sit there and analyze it and think about it. I'm very spatially, you know, motivated. So if your buttonholes are only 2, then you probably want to go in line with your buttonhole so that your buttonhole can stay closed and not do this. And that just looks nicer. You know, sometimes buttonholes could be a little thready. I don't know how many times I've said the word buttonholes today, but it's a lot. So thinking about where your button is, and I'll show you my other button. It had 6 holes in it. It was this kooky button, but it was the only one I had 8. Oh, it's okay. I'm glad it's awesome information, Brooke. Thank you for being my cheerleader. There's 5 people here, and I'm really glad one of you is telling me. So I know I want the top of my buttonhole to sit at the top of my holes of my button, because that's what's going to happen. Gravity is going to pull it down, right? So we're going to lower. So really, this is your 0, 0 point where this is going at, if you think in terms of geometry. Yeah, I did. I whipped out a geometry term. This is more in line with where I want the top of my buttonhole to be, because my button's going to sit like that. Okay? And then I mark the length of my button like that. Oops. It just moved. Sorry. I'm going to need a different color of chalk in a second. Like that. Okay. The other thing I like to do is I pin away from my button. That way I do not need to remove these pins, because I cannot see this as I'm sewing, because the presser foot's covering that up, and I can't see if I'm approaching it. And I get a little cocky on the 4th buttonhole, and I stop paying attention to where that's at. So this way I see those pins, and they're kind of a warning thing. I'm going to put my buttons in there so I don't lose one. So that is where my first buttonhole is. And then I measured, okay, so now I have 4 buttonholes, and this is the way I look at that. This was always, for me, the most confusing part. I have 4 buttonholes. How do I determine, this goes great for knitting buttons on sweaters as well, you guys. But at least on sweater knitting, what I find interesting with sweater knitting is that the designer builds the buttonholes in as you're knitting it. And as a sewer, I'm always like, eek, I don't even know what size buttons I'm going to use. I've learned that doesn't matter, because the hole is so stretchy in knitting that what I would always do would be like, well, what if I want a bigger button? So then I would do a fancier buttonhole and a bigger hole, and then that hole would be too big for the button I would use. So I've learned to trust the knitting designer in making buttonholes as you're going without even having your buttons picked. So in sewing, you never make your buttonholes without having your buttons picked. Don't do it ever, okay? Just pick out your buttons. I know you're excited. I told you to finish your buttonholes the second you finish your dress, but at the same time, you need the button in order to determine your buttonhole. So this was always the worst part for me. I'm like, I have 4. How do I do this? I can't like divide this in half and figure out these 2. These 2 are easy, right? I know about where I want this. I don't want this too high because, you know, kind of want it close to the waist. But because of the bulk of the seam in here, I'm going to put my buttonhole above that. So that one's determined. That's going to go there, okay? Now, to figure out these other 2, don't think of it as a number of buttons, but as a number of spaces between. So I have 1, 2, 3. And so what I would do is I measure, where'd my ruler go? Did I drop it? What I do is I measure the top of this one to the top of this one. I get 10.5 inches, and I divide that by 3, and that is the number of, that is the quantity of space between each button. And I got 3.5 is how I did that. And it is a weird decimal. I totally agree. If you get a weird decimal, lay it on there best you can, and then adjust it visually, because that is really what other people are going to see as well. So think of your buttonhole spacing as terms of the spaces between, not the number of buttons. You have 8 buttons, you have 7 spaces. But at least we get to break this up into 2 sections, the bodice and then the skirt. Okay. So I'm not going to do all of my buttons and buttonholes for you guys because I feel like that'll be a little tedious. But I will do one. I think I can get my machine up here and you might be able to see. And then I'll have them done by Saturday, and hopefully I'll be wearing my dress as well. Ooh, maybe I can't. Let's see. Let's see here. Look at that. It's like magic, isn't it? Pretty incredible. All right, so is this kind of weird? Ooh, how about that? What do you guys think? Yes, Christina, yeah, actually is my primary thing. Spacing buttons for my bust is really, really important, especially on something that's tighter or the buttons are really small. That is actually what I do usually, and I should have mentioned that. The only reason I'm not doing this is a full dress, and the weight is going to help of the dress, and I only have 8 buttons. And so what I usually do is put one buttonhole space placement right there at the maximum point of the bust to prevent it from being stressed right there. And then I do my spacing pass like up and down from that point. So it just depends. So that is an excellent question. I'm really sorry I didn't bring that up because this is a very feminine silhouette dress and it does require some thought that way. I'm pretty sure because of the weight of the dress in general that I'm not going to be having this issue. And because I've tried it on and it fits pretty good. So as long as it's a little bit loose through there, not too tight. This is really funky, you guys. It's really far away. Okay, so on my machine, this is my machine. I will show you. It's my machine. So this is my stitch width, needle position left and right, stitch length. This is the reverse. If I want it to be an auto reverse, so then all I do is press the reverse button, which is right here, and then it does it as a required, like an amount that I set it up. And then I have all these stitches here. So this is my zigzag, and then I would adjust the width right here. This is also an automatic back tack. Actually, this, I'm not sure what this is. There's the blind hem. See, it looks like a heartbeat. And there's sometimes they offer a reverse of this but not on this machine, which is fine. You don't usually use the reverse of that. But what you're looking for is one with some spaces between. There's a reverse of it, but it's a little closer together. Remember, any of these stitches, like even these decorative ones, they will look drastically different if you make them really long and really wide so you can play with them. This is my buttonhole, so I have 2 buttonholes right here, and then this is some sort of like a darning stitch. So I put it on 9, and then my little display says this, and so this is showing me that the first leg of the buttonhole is right here, and it's going to sew that first. It's going to go down. I'm going to press reverse. It's going to go across here. I'm going to press reverse. It's going to go up, press reverse, go across here. Then it stitches a few times, and then it raises the needle, and it's done. So that's how my machine works. Let's see if I can do this. That's really weird. It's so high up here. Okay. So I'm going to put my needle right on my vertical line, which is right here, I can see, and the bar tack line. And see, this is why I put my pins way out here. Now I can see where I'm going. Make sure your facing is completely flat underneath. I'm going to check my bobbin thread, make sure. Yeah, it's fine. I have a little thread cutter there. Usually I sew with this open, but I have this little free arm thing. This thing comes off, and it's like a little extra thing. So this is my, this is actually the bed of my machine right here. So, all right. I don't have to adjust the width or the length when I do my buttonhole stitch. I can't find my foot pedal. There we go. See, so it did a couple of stitches, and now it's doing the bar tack. I wish I could see better. Okay, now I see my pin is right there. I'm going to go past my pin because I want that to be my opening. Press my reverse. Now it's going to do it's going to go up the back. Now if I were using my buttonhole foot, this would make sure that it was much straight. Like it would make sure it's straight. Like right now it's doing pretty good because it's a lightweight thread. That's why you would want to switch to your buttonhole foot, because the grooves in there are going to help it stay straight. So now it does the bar tack. I kind of just described that wrong when I told you what my stitches were going to do. So now I'm just looking for the end. Press my reverse. There we go. Now it does the finish. Okay, so my machine did it a little differently than I thought, and I'm a little misaligned. So I can't see very well, so I wasn't guiding it. I was actually pulling a little bit, thinking I was going crooked, and I wasn't. So I kind of screwed that up myself. So my machine, really what it does is it does a few stitches, goes down, then it goes over here, stitches straight up, doesn't do the bar tack yet, goes across, then it comes down, and then it goes here, and it does a couple stitches. So that's my buttonhole. I'm going to do one more because I'll probably take that one out later on and fix it. So I'm just going to cut those. And when I'm on a roll with my buttonholes, I usually just go from one to the next and keep them all attached like that. I'm actually just going to make sure the distance is the correct distance for, because remember I moved it down a little bit. I'm pinning my buttonhole. Sorry, you can't see, but I'm pinning my buttonhole. I'm sorry, you probably couldn't see anything I was showing, huh? Because I have so little space here. But see how that's off right there? That's because I was guiding it wrong. I can't see what I'm doing, so usually I would be right here, right above my machine. But I can't see. Okay, so I'm marking my buttonhole. I'll show you again where I want. Okay. It's really easy. There's no reason for me not to use the buttonhole foot. See, like, I'm done. Right? No excuses. Okay, let's see how the better results we're gonna get here. And then I'm gonna pin also okay, so that's my button. And I can see my line. It's right here. It's very faint. Okay. I'm gonna make sure it's straight in the machine. I'm gonna trust it a little bit more this time. Oh, I'm stuck on something. Okay, something's wrong. Eek! Okay, that's bad. Make sure it's all threaded correctly. I don't think it's because I switched my presser fit. I don't know why I did that. Yuck. Yikers. That's pretty impressive. Can you see that? It happened. It happened. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'm starting my buttonhole over. And when I get in a row of the buttonholes, I actually go that fast. When I trust my measurements and I just do it. Go. That looks way better. See that? Not bad, right? There we go. So the hole is the size of the button. The buttonhole is longer because that's where the bar tacks are. You could probably do it a little smaller actually, but because really what's happening is that the dress is sitting on top of the buttonhole, it doesn't really, you know, it's not, that little bit's not going to matter too much. Okay, guys, let's move on to that Charlie. So you feel pretty good about that? Okay, and so I actually do sew my buttons on with the machine sometimes. I probably won't with these because I don't have a spare, and if I break one, I'll be pretty sad. Okay. I love that Hawthorne dress, but I'm really, really excited about this Charlie. So magical. It's amazing what you can do. And just like that, we are on to the Charlie because it's really close to done. Okay, so the one thing I did with that, you guys, was I looked at my vents and I couldn't figure out. Remember, I was getting, I was getting it turned to the outside, and it's because I just didn't clip it. That's all. I clipped it. See that? And that solved it all. Because usually you would have a little bit of a cutout for doing a French seam. I tried this on. It fits really nice. So I'm just going to hem it. Maybe I'll do the sleeves first. So you guys, unless you guys have a preference, you need to get going. But we're gonna get going on this. Let's see. I'm gonna trim some of my threads to make it a little easier so that they don't show. I already still need to kind of double check some of my front seams to make sure I don't have these little threads sticking out. Which one should I wear on Saturday? Because I'm wearing one. Making sure my seam's going to the back. There's my front. I'm just going to do a little rolled hem on the sleeve. See, look at that. I ironed it. Doesn't it look so nice? Ooh, this dress is amazing. It partly is the fabric, I have to admit. I don't sew enough with rayon. That's what I've decided. I'm going to do a really small rolled hem. A rolled hem that is on the straight grain of the fabric is really, really easy. Because it's not going to want to torque at all because it's on the straight grain. It just makes it a lot more willing to behave. I'm going to do quarter inch roll. A little faster than the bias hem. Like I said, I mean, the waist panel may be intimidating, but you guys, one step at a time, right? We did it no problem. And even though I was really nervous, and I read other people's posts, they were like, oh, I was holding my breath and cursing when I sewed that. But then everyone's turns out really nice. And after you do that with this dress, the rest is really easy. They make up for all that. That front facing, yeah, I got a little torquing in that, but you know, it was easy to fix, right? We fixed it right away, no problem. One down. Some people are really picky about how they start and stop. I've actually read some people say that they've learned from home sewing teachers that are really, really, really particular about how they do that, and they don't even back tack. I'll show you how some of them do it. I try and start and stop where, like on certain, like if it's a solid and not a print, and it's going to show. On the neckline, I always start on the shoulder. I don't start at the center back, even though that's where most of them do that. I feel like it gets lost in the shoulder seam easier, and you might see the back. I have long hair, so it covers it, but for some people, they don't. And they also don't back tack, and I'll show you how they do it when they don't. Is they will just start sewing, and then when they come around to it at the beginning, they try and get right back in the exact same holes, and they sew a few extra stitches, and then they hand tie it, just like we do on our darts. I have never heard of people doing that, but I've been seeing people posting that they do that, and that is probably just someone's technique that's caught on, it sounds like a really old school technique, and it sounds pretty classy. So it just depends on how you've been taught, what your preference is. And, you know, my way of sewing is obviously a mishmash of production style and home style techniques. And I don't make any apologies about that. I know that my style of sewing isn't for everybody. But I'm about getting it done and about being secure and about it fitting. Those are my kind of my big things. So you can't know if you like sewing until you start wearing your garment. You can't know what you like and don't like about something until you finish something. Having a sense of success is really important to me. And sometimes finishing is that sense of success. Even if it ends up being a dreadful garment in one way or another, we all have those. Oh, there's a printing flaw in my fabric. I'm just going to leave it because it's like a little slub in the weaving actually, and then they printed it. When they printed it, they didn't catch it. So they come back to the beginning and try and get right back into the exact same holes like that, and then they leave a tail and tie it with the first thing. So that's their one of the ways people do it. It seems excessive to me, I'm actually not going to do it. I didn't leave enough tail and I didn't get close enough to the start. You don't actually have to back tack all the time. You can just do that, like go over it, and it's a lot less bulky. It's a little smoother. So, all right, let's do our hem and then we're done. Okay, so this was the one I actually opened up to show you I could finish. So this is, see, you would clip that and then do your French seam. I always do that. I always get my work under my needle and then I start sewing because it holds it down so nicely. There's no raw edge. There we go. Pretty sure that's gonna work. But you have to trim, you have to clip this to this seam. All right. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start on the back side of a vent. I just need to find the back of my dress. This is so much dress. This is the back of my dress. Right. Oh, it's the front. There we go. Here's the back. Here's the back. Okay, here's the back. I'm going to start on the back side of the vent like this. I'm going to go up, around, and then to the front. And then finish on the back. Make sure that this is clipped to my seam line here. And it's because I need to open it up. Like that. Because we're making a vent. I'm going to make a 1/4 inch and a 1/4 inch. Or I'm doing like 3/8 because I'm kind of trying to blend it in with the start and stop point right there. I'm going to push my seam to the back. And I'm going to go above here and frame the opening of the vent. I think there's a lot nicer ways to do this. I think I did kind of not do this in the nicest way. But we did the French seam and that kind of limited us because I didn't set the pattern up to sew it for French seams when I cut it out. So next time I would do that. I'm going to go like this. Yeah, this is definitely not a great production technique or home sewing technique. Let's see. There's lots of ways to sew vents, and I like to frame mine with stitching. Because this is all in the straight grain, it's really easy to sew. It just wants to do it because I'm not really asking it to do anything out of its comfort zone. I ran out of bobbin, of course. See, I knew I would. That's okay. I have an easy way to do it. I just wind it on my home machine when I'm just doing a single project. There we go. My bobbins are not the same for these machines. That's why I can't interchange them. That's a lot faster to wind a bobbin on my home machine than on my Juki, because typically when I am winding a bobbin on here, it's happening while I'm sewing, and it happens within like a minute or so. But it is fast. It's just if I have to take it all apart and unthread it and do it, it's not as fast. So we're almost done. Saturday, I think I'm going to cut out the aster Tomorrow I'm going to cut out the Aster by Colette. If that's appealing to you guys, it's a simple blouse. It's a quick sew through. I think I can get through the whole thing in one sitting. And all right, I'm gonna do my little hem technique where I finish the corners. I'm gonna trim that like that. I'm gonna fold up a corner like this. Fold another corner like this. I'm gonna fold a little more. So see, I fold a corner like this. Fold it along that edge. And then I turn it under. And then I have a mitered corner. Just like that. Another way you could do it is just to hem your vents, both sides, and then do your hems. Because what will be important about that is you do want your vent lengths to be the same. The slit. I call the slit the vent. That's just a term, sorry. So I'm thinking about doing the Aster, but I also, since I forgot I'd ordered the tunic, I kind of want to cut that out and sew that too. So I'm open to whatever. I already have the Aster ready to go though, so like it's all ready to cut. It'll be really quick. And that way we can have a sew through, a quicker sew through than watching me do these dresses, these bigger projects. So when I do this, because it's on a straight grain, I do pull because then it wants to turn under a little bit. It's only when it's on the bias or on a curve that I won't pull like that, because it tends to then want to torque or curl or be misaligned. But because it's on the straight grain and the cross grain, it's going to want to do what I tell it to do. I'm getting close to my mitered corner again. Okay, so I turn my corner. Okay, I'm gonna trim this. Probably don't have to. Okay. I turn a corner about 3/4 of an inch. I'm turning this corner the full width of the hem allowance that I'm using. You vote for Aster, all right. Well, if you're actually saying something, I'm going with your vote. Okay. Maybe I'll try and also figure out how to set up my cameras on my serger, because that needle sharp one, I'm not going to do that on the industrial machine. I'm going to do that on the serger. See, I folded it and then folded it again. This took me a while to figure out how to do, and I figured it out on my own. Oh, I lost it. Ah, stop. There we go. I figured it out on my own because I didn't like what I was doing. I just didn't like my hem finish, and so I started just looking around and seeing what would work and trying different things out and stuff like that. I keep whacking my finger. Okay. So I turn my corner, my triangle, fold up to it. I'm having a little trouble here. Okay, fold, fold. Don't want to get a weird point. Oh, I don't know how I did that one. Let's see. It's okay. It's okay. We're going for done, right, team? It's a little softer of a corner that time. So I still, I haven't gotten, this will be my first vent where I'm going to have both sides done. So then I will make sure that they're the same length as each other as I go. I tend to like to sew hems all at once. That's why I didn't do the vent, but there are some times I do like just the vent and then I do the hem. And one way to ensure it is that, you can trim it right on the, I say trim it on the table, meaning like you can make sure that everything was straight to begin with, and that way when you're sitting here sewing that all you need to achieve is that your hem width is the same wherever you're sewing it. Okay, so I started on the back side. So this is the back, this is the front. All right, just trying to remind myself. This should be the back, actually. Yeah, this is the back. I don't know what I just said, but I just want to push my seam the right way. Pushing my little threads into the hem. Just like that. I'm going to go past it and frame it just like this. This is definitely not the best way to finish this. I screwed up somewhere. I know I did. Because look at that raw edge against it. That's going to be fine. It's not going to cause problems, but it's not proper. I'm totally admit my mistakes. Okay, so I do want this length to be the same. Just making sure. Like that. Okay. So I've said this before, but I know like some people can't comment in the stream because they don't have what YouTube calls a channel. It's not a channel. It's just an account. It's just their weird wording for setting up an account, and then it prevents from people from, well, it helps prevent people from just dropping in streams and then, making comments and then leaving, trolling things, making inappropriate comments, things like that. It doesn't mean you have to post videos or anything like that. It just is their way of, making you have an account so that you have commenting privileges. And then that way also, like, you can start, like, if you watch other YouTube videos and give likes and things like that, it'll save those things for you, and you can actually do that now. Like, if you ever, want to put a like on a video and it's like, you must log in to do that. That's what that is. That's all. And get rid of some of these threads. They're too long to tuck in there. I try and get rid of all threads. I don't usually want to tuck anything in there because you might feel it through the fabric, and I don't like that. This is always the easier direction to go for me. I may consider doing a pattern stream, like a pattern drafting stream, if you guys want some pattern hints, drafting a pocket or sizing. I know sizing is the biggest woe for everybody. No matter your shape, everyone has sizing woes. Okay, there we go. Turn the corner. It's nice that I actually got to sink my needle into that one. All right, you guys, almost done. The color of this dress isn't that great on the camera, but in person, it's so rich. I love it. Just trimming some threads. I was almost late to the stream because I was actually trimming my bangs sitting right here. Do you guys ever do that? I don't know why, but when I'm sewing, I really hate my bangs touching my eyes or my eyelashes or my eyebrows. And my hair's been growing. My bangs grow fast, and so usually I try never to touch them, but I've trimmed them 3 times in the last like week and a half. I don't know what's wrong. And now my hairdresser asks me, "Did you cut your bangs?" And yeah, I did. Yeah. But it's so easy, you know, I just go like this. Like that. It's too distracting otherwise. Gotta give my dress a haircut and me a haircut. I have a cowlick, so bangs are a challenge. But then I learned I have other cowlicks on my head, so short hair is a challenge. You know, we all have our things. Okay, here's my other vent. I just want to make sure my length is, this is a lot easier to determine length going from this direction. I'm just kind of trying to make it loosen up, make sure that I'm not pulling it unnecessarily. Looks pretty good, like about right there. And you could, you know, I could do a tiny little notch like that. Yeah, help me. Let's see. Well, I'm really glad you guys came and watched me sew these dresses from start to finish. My first things I've sewn for you guys pretty much. You know, it's been good. There's my little notch. That it right there? Yeah, that's it. Okay. Corner. There we go. Got this one better. Put my all in there. Stop pushing away the needle. I'm gonna sink my needle in that right there so that I can keep going. And remember, I'm doing this for fun, so I'm totally down to do whatever you guys want. You can leave a comment on a video or email me through my website, which is chickenbootsusa.com. There's like a so live stream tab and an email address there. And you know, feel free to tell me something you don't like. Like you don't like that I'm doing these production techniques. You know, I'm down. I can handle it. Trust me. I never thought I really could do something like this. I'm not a good public speaker. I'm really a terrible public speaker. I almost pass out if I have to do that. But I found that something that I'm really comfortable doing, it doesn't really bug me so much. I get a little nervous and I feel a little out of breath at the beginning, but okay, look at that. There's our starting point. That was a long hem. Doo-doo-doo. You always gotta make that noise. Hubba hubba. Oh yeah. I'm about this dress, you guys. Yeah. My ties. My hem. So that's why I see how I framed that. Can you see the stitching? So it goes like this. Around, I made a little box. And here's the inside. So I feel like this. Do you see how there's just stitching on one layer of fabric right here? Not a fan. And so if I hadn't done a French seam, that wouldn't have happened. I probably would have serged each of these edges, or better yet, if you don't have a serger, you can roll hem the edges of your seam allowance. That's not a flat felled seam. It is a, does anyone know the term for that? Not a flat felled seam. Flat felled seam is different. It looks a little like a French, but it's stitched to the garment. Flat felled, what is that? So basically what you're doing is what we did on our facing on the Hawthorne is you're hemming each edge of your seam allowance, and then you can actually sew a seam and have the seam open still, and then each edge is roll hem finished. And then what you're doing is if this was an open seam right here, like fabric on each side, then you're doing a box around that. That looks classy. That's nice. So that's how I would have probably done it. I'm sewing these blind. Like, I've never sewn these garments before. I skimmed the directions to make sure there wasn't something that I wasn't going to be aware of when I got to it. But for the most part, I'm sewing these blind for the first time through without the instructions, and also modifying the way they were intended to be sewn on the fly. So that's why I make no apologies on it. So, all right, guys. So happy you're here. I know there's only a few of you, but I'm really glad. Hoping Saturday we'll get a little more people here, and I'm going to do the Aster, and then maybe soon I'm hoping that I'm going to sew through the Charlie Caftan again one more time all the way through, start to finish, and just do that on my own and then upload it as a single standalone video. So I hope you guys get going on something that you're sewing and you show me what it is. Follow me on Instagram at SewSewLive so you can tag me in something or say hi. I will be at a show in early October, Lambtown. So if you're going to be there, you're welcome, Brooke. Please stop by. I love meeting other sewers as well. So, and I hope to encourage you guys to sew. All right. Bye. I'll see you guys on Saturday, 11 a.m. Pacific, for a couple hours or so. And then we will start working on something new. So take care. Hasta.